Anyone hear us?
There you go.
No.
Make sure to
Turn
leave
that
your
off.
laptops as well.
Yeah, so how do I do my laptop? I have mine.
How do you do the three dots or something there on the computer audio?
Yeah, it's gonna echo because he's got to turn his volume all the way down.
Yes, yes.
You just mute yourself.
Oh, the muting, you have to actually not go through the speakers.
Yeah, you gotta make sure that your volume on your laptop's all turned down too, because that'll give the feedback, or a phone.
Okay, assume everyone can hear us?
Well, I don't think they can. Yeah, they should be able to. If Alan doesn't.
I can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. They can hear us. Sorry for the technical issues, but it seems to happen to us a lot, so anyway. I'd like to welcome everyone to the hybrid planning board meeting of November 9th, and I'd just like to take a call to order. Ms. Creighton,
Here.
Ms. Felicio.
Here.
Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Gilbert.
Here.
Mr. Foley.
Here.
Kenny's not with us tonight. Thanks. I think we have a quorum. I remind all board members, guests asked to be recognized if they wish to speak, and this meeting's being recorded. First item on the agenda is acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence. We received a letter from Dennison Hall on 10/26. We also received a email on the hearing tonight, late today at 4 o'clock. I sent it out to everyone. I don't know if anyone has seen it yet, but it came in late. Mary, you have something?
So we received an email from Ann Harrison as well. The link to the Conservation Law Foundation.
Okay, when was that received?
This week sometimes.
Friday or something.
Okay, thank you.
We had previously, we already have the Jim Starkey one in the folder.
Okay, at this time, any public comments with items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you. At this time, the planning board would like to welcome our interim town planner, Betsy Ware. Welcome,
there.
Betsy.
Thank you.
Impressive resume. Look forward with working with you. Good time.
Well, I look forward to working with this board and as I said in a memo to you, I grew up in this town. And my mother, I lived here on and off until my mother passed in 1995. So great community, great place to grow up. And I'm looking forward to working with the board.
Great, thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thanks.
Okay, we have a public hearing scheduled for 7. Before that, we have a few housekeeping things on the recodification. The number one thing, Sarah, senior housing section, vote to correct numbering error on 9.4.
I don't think we need to do that anymore, do we?
No, that was brought up.
Yeah, I think we're leaving it at 9.6 in case the other things don't happen. Greg, isn't that correct?
No, we do need to correct. So it was it originally said 9.3. And we need to change that to 9.4.
Oh, 9.4, okay. The motion needs to say. I'm trying to figure out where it says 9.3.
So the original motion and article that you approved had 9.3 as the new section. And it should say 9.4, which we have corrected on the materials, but you just need to make that formal vote to acknowledge that your original
I'm looking at
9.3
the
really is
motion right
9.4.
here. It says 9.4.
I think it was changed.
It was
by-
changed,
Well, the
correct,
booklet's changed.
We have to vote to do it. That's all.
correct.
Okay, got it, thank you. Sorry. I'm behind.
Somebody make the motion.
I make a motion that we change the motion for Article 13 to add a new section 9.4 instead of 9.3.
Second.
All right.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, Mr. Gilbert.
Yes.
Mr. Only.
Yes.
Creighton.
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
and Ms. Felicio,
Yes.
and chair votes yes, 7-0. 6-0, sorry. Any other housekeeping items
Yeah.
before we talk?
Oh, two other housekeeping items, or one housekeeping and one proposal. We needed to send the planning board needs to send a report to the town moderator or the board of selectmen, I'm not sure, select board, to just indicate our work. And so I put it at this, I totally forgot about this. We've totally forgot about this. So it is in your packet this afternoon, but it's a compilation of the cricket article we approved last week. And just exactly the front matter of each section here, which is basically the open house material with the edits that were errors like. So that's it's just a procedural thing. So I'd like a motion to accept the planning board report. If you want, I can pull it up and share it, but it's in the folder.
Alan hasn't seen it.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Wilson, you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, this is a statutory requirement under chapter 40A, section 5. And I've reviewed the report that Sarah drafted, and it looks fine to me, satisfies the statute.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any further discussion? Ms. Foley,
I did not see it in the packet.
It didn't go till this afternoon. I can show it to you. I can pull it if you.
And then my second point is, my understanding is the planning board was supposed to do a report before we handed it off to the select board. Is that correct?
that I don't know.
I can answer that. The statutory requirement is simply that it needs to be reported in time to be available at town meeting. I don't think there's a requirement that it be submitted to the select board prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, is it in the folder now?
It is in the folder now.
I can't get it.
Are you host? Can you-
But it's a top, well, if you just do modified, it's planning board report to the town. PDF. I can read the front matter of the Manchester, it's basically what we approved for the cricket article. Exactly, and Laura edited with our support. Planning board has voted to present a number of changes to zoning bylaws at the special town meeting. The board has been working on for more than 3 years. For more than 3 years. The select board voted to recommend all of the articles. Here's a brief summary of the key proposed changes. Proposed changes clarify and update a number of provisions. They will strengthen and broaden a number of types of oversight, moving moving certain provisions for junk cars, curb cuts, driveway entrances, stormwater management for general bylaws where they have broader applicability, and introducing performance-based requirements to bolster site plan review processes that's required for special permits. It provides for new small housing accommodations such as in-law apartments to be created inside existing single-family homes. Such housing will be subject to greater regulations and allowed by right and meet certain criteria. The cap is set at 20 new housing units per year. 3, allowing the opportunity for senior housing facilities within Manchester, within neighborhood input and rigorous site plan review by special permit. 4, allow certain changes to existing homes that do not comply with zoning, about 2/3 of the homes in Manchester, as long as setback and other dimensional requirements are met. Modify existing residential conservation bylaw to allow it in every district by special permit, including site plan review, which eliminate the 5-acre parcel minimum. Strengthen and update our bylaws and align with the goals identified through significant town input collected in the master plan. Summary follows. And I just took the section, front matter for each section and changed the font.
Any further discussion? I'll take a roll call vote on accepting the motion on the plan. Ms. Delicio,
No.
Ms. Foley,
I'd like to review it, so I'm gonna abstain right now.
Ms.
Yes.
Fraser?
Yes. Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so it's 4-2, 4-1, and 1 abstention. Thank you. Any other housekeeping items on recodification before I talk about these motions? Moving and seconding?
I had one. So I don't know if you got my email, that, there's links on the town website for the proposed articles that go to old bylaws that we did like in April and May, so it's pre our modifications that we've been doing over the past few months, so it's very confusing. I've had different residents come up to me saying different things, and I didn't know what they were talking about. We were talking about swimming pools, and they're saying, you know, that it's still going to the building inspector, and I said, no, we took that out. And so I went to the website, and they're just going to a different link. So I'm concerned that residents aren't getting the actual articles.
Well, I think the question would be, in terms of legal, would be the warrant goes to the right articles, and I checked that.
The warrant articles aren't live.
They're not what,
Oh, you
You
can't
can't click on them.
but you can copy it.
I can't. I mean, I could type it.
I mean, to be fair, there's a section on the recodification website that links to the correct articles. It just depends which link you're clicking on.
So why don't we remove the bad link that
Yeah.
takes us to the old, we should talk to Tiffany in the morning.
Is there a reason why the warrant articles aren't live? They're blue.
I don't know, we didn't do them.
I mean, I don't have any conversation, so I mean, that's out of my control. Because you and Chris are,
On the links to the warrant articles, make sure they become,
I
they get
checked when
live.
they were live.
They haven't been live for me for the past couple weeks, but
I don't think they've ever been live.
no.
Well, the planning board website certainly has the correct one, appears to have the correct one.
The warrant articles.
Yeah, but and then it says motion for article.
Planning.
So if you go to the town meeting link and you go to this warrant articles. Check. So these are not live, so if you try to link to these.
Okay, so the links within the articles on the document are not live.
And then there's the other issue on the zoning recodification website. With,
So you would need to have to copy it and put it into your browser.
The warrant is correct, though.
All right, well, let's see if we can get those live tomorrow. Anything else? Okay, any other, before we start the hearing, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the moving, seconding, and speaking on each motion responsibility. I thought about this, and I've come up with the following people to speak, and I can take comments from the board on this, but Articles 4 through 7, Sarah will move and I will second. Article 8, I would have Chris move and I would second. Article 9, Sarah, and I would second. Article 10 and 11, Chris, and I would second. Article 12, Sarah, and I would second, and 13, 14, 15, and 16, Chris, and I would second.
Ron, could I ask you to just do that again more
I
slowly?
will send you, I will email you this tonight. And I have it, I'll send you an email with it.
Could you just repeat them for me?
Thank you.
Let me repeat them. 4 through 7, Sarah. 8, Chris. 9, Sarah. 10, 11, Chris. 12, Sarah. 13, 14, 15, 16, Chris. All seconded by me. Okay. Any
May-
further, any more
May I ask
discussion?
why there was no discussion on that?
I decided this would be the best people to speak to get success on what we're proposing. I think I chose the people that done the most work and can speak on this. I think it makes sense. 2 board members did not vote for the warrant, so I didn't think that would be germane. And then 1 board member has been not showing up, so I thought these were the best people.
Okay.
That was my thinking.
I have one other zoning issue that I'd like to raise.
Yeah.
I know that we have a lot to do, at least tabs, and we worked hard on this, but I have asked, and I know Alan would like to have this, believes that this may not go, get completed in one night. I'm hoping that he's wrong. But I think it's in the town's, the voters' best interest that we work to have it be completed in one night, to the extent that we can, with the moderators allowing a discussion and so forth. So I'd like to make a motion that that we authorize the chair to pass over motions after 10 p.m. Make a motion to pass over motions after 10 p.m. at the November 14th town meeting, if he feels that it's in the best interest of the goals of the zoning recodification effort. So that's basically suggesting that Ron could make a decision, particularly as the meeting goes late. If we only have a couple things left, rather than bring people back for a second day, it would be up to him to say, you know, we'll move it off till spring. Not take them out of order, not do anything else, just move through them and then potentially move to pass over in the interest of respect for people's time.
So I have a question about that. Is the second day pose any risks or problems? Why would we want to?
Well, the second day, I think that I'll let Alan answer that. My thought is after 10 p.m. if we're only still on Article 4, and we would want to go to a second day to get important things done. I mean, Article 4, hopefully we'll be further along than that. But if the first 3 articles take a long time, it could be only at Article 6 or 8 at 10:30 p.m. It's difficult to know where we'll be.
The second day is,
So-
the question is always whether you get a quorum. That's always
Right,
the
so then I
first-
guess maybe Alan.
first
could-
issue.
Alan, would you speak on the second day and possible issues?
Well, there are a number of issues. I should mention that I have a letter that is now posted on the town website to the voters, and it will be published in the Cricket on Friday, saying that my expectation is, given the warrant as it stands now, if we try to do all the articles, we will probably need 2 nights. And if so, if it becomes apparent that we'll need 2 nights, I don't intend to keep us late into the wee hours on Monday, but we'll adjourn at a reasonable time, or we'll propose to adjourn at a reasonable time, because it's subject to the voters' decision to reconvene. There is the risk that we might not get a quorum for a second night. Or that on a second night, it might be a very different group of voters than we have for the first night. So it's really hard to predict what the circumstances will be, but if it becomes obvious that we need 2 nights, I don't think we should try to press on until midnight or later on the first night.
I think my hope is that we can get it done in one night. The issues seem to be, the policy issues seem to be matters of opinion rather than. So people will state their opinions and then the voters will decide. But, so my proposal is that we authorize the chair to pass over motions after 10 PM on November 14th at November 14th town meeting, if he feels that it's in the best interest of the goals of the zoning recodification effort. That's the only way, besides specifically targeting a particular article, that we can move to pass over. So it gives us the latitude, it gives Ron the latitude to decide to pass over something.
Let me just
Yeah.
interject for a moment. You stated your motion correctly the first time. It got a little muddled the second time. It would authorize Ron to move to pass over. The decision to pass over is ultimately in the hands of the meeting.
I guess I'm not clear. Are you saying for the planning board chair to move to not go to the second night or to, I'm not understanding.
So I'm thinking it's 11:30, people are drifting out. And we have one article left. Rather than bringing back people the next night, Ron could make a decision as chair to push it off to, whenever we decide, April or some other time. So, so we move to pass over. That we make a motion to pass over, and as Alan said, if the meeting wants to discuss it, then they would vote no to pass over. We would stay or take it up the next night. I'm just trying to give us some flexibility, because absent that, it's my opinion that we as a board have voted to put them forward. And we have no public meeting to decide to pull them back. So therefore, we're committing to a second night if the discussion goes long. We're committing to either stay late, stay till they're done, or do a second night. Without some provision to pass over that has been endorsed by us. Because otherwise, we've all voted, we haven't all voted, majority of the board has voted to push these things forward. So that's my, I'm just trying to give us a little bit of flexibility. I trust that Ron has good judgment. And
So at 10 o'clock,
after 10 o'clock, anytime after, so. It just means that he can't decide it at 8 o'clock. I'm trying to
We're
balance,
close to the end, I'd like to,
Yeah.
finish it up, if Alan would allow it.
right,
I didn't think Alan wanted it to go past 10. Right? Is that the call?
I didn't hear that.
I thought I heard you maybe at a board of selectmen meeting that you didn't want it to go past 10.
Well, I start thinking about the time to adjourn at about 10. What I've said in my letter is that I don't intend to keep us to an unreasonable hour. And I'll try to adjourn by 10:30 if at that point it's obvious that we're going to need a second night. The decision is the voters, not mine. But my experience over a very long time is that anything we try to do past 11 becomes a real mess. People are cranky, they want to go home, they're tired. They will have been at it for more than 4 hours at that point. It's just not a good idea to be trying to decide on significant substantive issues much after 11 o'clock. So I will start thinking about whether it's appropriate to adjourn and move to a second night at about 10, depending on where we are.
Chris,
Can anyone move to pass over an article? Or do you
Yes.
have to-
well, no, but you recognize the planning board for the main motion.
Yes,
And so if the main motion has been made, then Chris can't, if I've made the main motion for Article 14, or whoever Chris is making it, I can't then pass over that.
No, you can't, and I won't. Once early in my tenure, I allowed a motion to pass over as an amendment to a main motion to take affirmative action, and it was a disaster. And I promised myself I would never do it again. So once the main motion is made, it's the motion to pass over is not in order. I thought Chris was just asking a general question whether anybody could make a motion to pass over, and that's.
But I guess my presumption is that Ron has listed who's gonna list the motions. And the agreement on the part of the board is that Chris and I would follow the board's voted recommendation to move these forward. I mean, it
Yes.
would seem to be very much out of a bad form for me to decide on my own to make a motion to pass over something.
So essentially what we're doing here is authorizing
Authorizing
the
Ron.
chairman to act on our behalf
Right,
to pass over some of the articles.
if he deems it's in the best, if it's in the interest of the goals of the zoning recodification effort, which I think we've been fairly clear about, clarity, updating, master plan.
Okay.
I can add those, the goals of the master, to provide clarity, to provide administrative updates, and to follow the recommendations of the master plan.
I guess my only concern with that is because I trust Ron to do the right thing, is that I'm wondering if it interferes kind of with the town meeting process, in the sense that residents show up anticipating that we're gonna go through all the articles, whether it's one night or two nights, and then it becomes the decision of the chair to not do that. So I'm wondering if we're shortchanging the residents in any way.
Oh, it's not his decision, he's just making a motion.
Right.
And then it goes to a vote.
Yes, exactly.
It only happens by a vote of the meeting, so I don't think you're shortchanging the voters at all. And I'll frankly be amazed if anyone is disappointed not to have a second night.
I would suggest two things. I don't see any reason to limit it to 10 PM. There's no real reason to do that. It might be appropriate at 9:30, I don't know. There's no reason to put a time limit in there, and it's also, we be giving you, I'm in favor of this, but maybe you might choose to pass over 13 and 14 and jump to 15. So I think whatever motions you choose, you could, I would authorize you to make the motion to pass over whatever those are, because between now and then you may develop some ideas, and go ahead.
I thought we just said that part of that motion was we wouldn't jump around.
Well, I think the jumping around could be that you would pass over, for example, ADUs, just as a, for example, 15, and take up the two shorter ones of 15 and 16, as a for instance.
So
I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like then we might be cherry picking. So
Yeah, then things seems like orchestrated behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
that makes me nervous.
I mean, your statement that we weren't gonna skip and move things around.
Well, I said we're not gonna reorder them, is my recommendation, you could.
I was
Anyway, let's
okay
make a
with
motion.
until we heard that.
Right, I've made a motion. Let's do a second.
So did the motion talk about taking things out of order? Because I'm not sure if I'm okay with that. I haven't thought about it long enough, and
The motion is it does not anticipate one way or the other, does not specify one way or the other. The motion is, I move that we authorize the chair to make a motion to pass over motions after 10 PM. And the reason I said that is because that's the rough time when Alan says he's starting to think about whether we're gonna go to it next night. At the November 14th town meeting, if he feels it's in the best interest of the goals of the zoning recodification effort.
Well, I guess I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
can we add that we won't pass over?
You can make that amendment if you'd like.
Well, I was just trying to have a discussion if other people felt
I
about it. I wasn't
think-
gonna waste time if people were okay
Yeah,
with
my
it.
feeling is that I trust Ron and let's see how it goes and.
I guess that what you started out by saying is different than where we ended. So you said that we weren't going to skip over things and now we did, so.
I said we weren't gonna reorder things.
Well, I think skipping over is reordering.
It's not the same thing. I understand your point. I hear your point. I think we just I'm just trying to give us some flexibility in getting this through this, and not having one thing hanging over till the next night, or 3 things, or I don't know, 5 things. I don't know.
But I think the initial conversation was, we're gonna stop here because it's late and then we're gonna move to the spring. But now we're going to talk about which ones we think might go through right now. And I think that's a different conversation.
The only thing I would say on that is that the town meeting has to vote and approve whatever we're doing, so it's not like Ron is making a decision on behalf.
Well, he's gonna make the motion to pass over 5, 6, 10, 13,
And
so.
if he does that, then if the town meeting votes to do it, that's fine. If they don't, then it's not gonna pass, and
I guess, but that's not the conversation we had in the beginning, is what my point is.
Can I just interject and I think and perhaps answer Christina's question? There's a difference between passing over and reordering. Under our bylaws, we take up the articles in the order they appear in the warrant, unless the meeting votes to take them in a different order. So reordering means after Article 5, someone moves to take up, instead of Article 6, Article 9. That's reordering.
But I think that's, Alan, thank you, but I think that's what happened at the end of the conversation. Sarah says that we're gonna leave the judgment up to Ron to potentially skip over 10, 11, and 12 and jump to 13. So to me, that is reordering.
Well, it's not. It's keeping the same order, but it's passing over some that come next in order to get to those that come later.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded, and we take a roll call vote. Mr. Gilbert,
Yes.
Mr. Olney,
yes.
Ms. Creighton.
Yes,
Foley,
No,
Ms. Delicio.
no,
And I guess, do I have a vote?
yes,
Yes.
all right,
Okay, it's 4-2.
thank you.
Okay. We're a little behind now. Okay, well, before I open the public hearing, just for the audience, just to respect all participants, whether you disagree or not. No negative innuendos or attacks. Please keep your remarks focused on specific topics. And please refrain from repeating questions. So the process will be, I'll open the hearing, we'll hear from the applicant, we'll hear from the board, we'll hear from the public. We'll deliberate, I'll get a sense from the board whether they want to vote tonight or on this. Or a need for a continuance. If not, I'll close the public hearing and make a motion to vote. After that, we'll have someone write the decision, but I think Betsy, you volunteered to do that. Thank you. Okay. This time, I'd like to open the public hearing on a special permit application for a site plan approval for Crocker's Boatyard. Public hearing notice has been duly and advertised in the Cricket as follows. In accordance with MGL Chapter 48, Section 11, the Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 9th at 7 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting with public participation via Zoom to consider the application of Crocker's Boatyard to install and reconfigure floating docks and to create a marina reconfiguration zone at their facility located in Manchester Harbor. This is in accordance with section 7.5 and 4.1.10J of the zoning bylaw. This is to add additional flip areas to the existing dock, extending towards the harbor channel. The board has received responses from the police chief, harbor master, and the Concom were all made part of this record. No responses have been received from any of the other boards. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Susan St. Pierre on behalf of the applicant for Crocker's Boatyard.
Thank you, dear. Also, Skip Crocker is here with us tonight.
And Skip, welcome.
So as most of you are aware, what we're proposing is an extension to the existing floating dock system located at Crocker's Boatyard. And the proposal is to extend the system southerly into Manchester Harbor. We reviewed the layout with the harbor master throughout the whole process, and he's been supportive of the project. We year before the Manchester Conservation Commission and received an order of condition in September. Additional permits that we'll need to get is for this particular project, we filed a NEPA environmental notification form when we did the first phase a couple of years ago. Included in that first phase was a configuration of the second phase that was later dropped during the local approval process. So because of that change, we have to go back to NEPA with a notice of project change. So in addition to the note, and we didn't want to do that until we finished the planning board process. So in addition to the NEPA filing, we need a Chapter 91 license for the placement of structures in tidal waters and then of the Commonwealth. And then we also need a Army Corps Section 10 permit for the placement of structures in navigable waters of the United States. So basically the components of the project, we're proposing 10 finger floats, 6 on the westerly, so this is the main float coming down. So there are 6 finger floats off the west side and then 4 off the east side. And then we have a terminal float proposed at the end. Then we also have some larger areas of docks that will be used by the dock master and stored equipment, things of that nature. So the proposed floating docks will be held in place by 16 new 12-inch steel pipe piles. Let's see. So in terms of impacts, putting a marina in a harbor that's recently been dredged is an appropriate use. We've skewed the orientation, as you can see. It doesn't go straight out from the existing floating dock because we need to maintain 25-foot setback from the projected riparian property lines of adjacent property owners. We're set back 20 feet from a proposed future 70-foot wide channel that will be created once the Crocker Boatyard and Manchester Marine, which is the next hearing, are working together with the harbor master to create this channel. There's no impact on water and sewer infrastructure. The board asked questions about parking spaces and traffic at the site visit. So the project will require 6.5 parking spaces. And those will either be provided at the Crocker lower boatyard where the yard is, or they have 2 lots off of Bridge Street where there's plenty of parking. And then according to the ITE transportation manual, the marina will generate 48 trips per day. But what's important is that that's only 1.4 trips in the AM peak hour, in each AM peak hour, and 4.2 trips in the PM peak hour. So it's a small amount of traffic. The board also asked us to touch on public benefits of the project when we're at the site visit. So we've outlined those in the memo that we sent last week, but I'll just review them now. So again, the project is going to be utilizing the public investment that the town made in dredging the harbor back in 2017, 2018. It's going to be improving navigation because once you see the other project, it's going to create sort of a line of the navigation channel, which is going to help anybody navigating into Manchester Harbor, even people that are using the harbor or visitors coming to the harbor. Investing in the floating dock system improves the economic viability of this important local business in Manchester. The existing marina plus the proposed marina will generate $25,000 annually in harbor use and dredging assessment fees. The proposed extension of that is $6,800 a year. The property generates $22,000 in real estate taxes. It has 16 to 22 jobs, 16 right now, but they need 22. The boats that berth at the facility are required to pay excise, state excise taxes. Half of that goes to the town. There are secondary economic impacts from the project to other town businesses. People go get something to eat, they go buy paint, they go do whatever they do when they're boating. And also it addresses the demand for slip space. As the harbor master mentioned, there's a very long waiting list for mooring spaces, and there's also a very long list for slip spaces. Crocker Brook has a wait list of 60. And then lastly, I'd just like to say that it preserves a business that has a rich, as part of the rich maritime history of the town. So those are the public benefits that we addressed in our original filing, how the project meets all the criteria for the planning board to issue a special permit. And so we hope that you could do that. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Go around. Christina?
I guess for my first question, you said no impact on water and sewer infrastructure. What would be the increase of demand of water with the additional, I mean, there's washing and maintenance of boats. So has that been looked at?
Steve, can you answer that?
I mean, we won't be storing any more boats than we typically do now. Let's say there's a minimal number of people that wash their boats on a regular basis. Obviously nobody washes in the summer because of the water ban. I think we use. We're using. I can't remember the number of water use, but I'd say it's a minimal impact on water use.
And this is, I haven't read all the water resource committee's reports, but I both thought I read or heard that between you and Manchester Marine, that you guys were one of the top seasonally of water consumers. Is that false?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay, I'd like, that's why I
I don't
I
know.
thought I heard that in one meeting passing. So I guess with the increase of boats, I would just assume that you would use water to at the end of the season to close them up, store them, and
We power wash boats.
Right.
But I mean, that's. When we have a wash water tank that we collect water in the. We don't cycle, we pump it, we have it pumped out. That's 3,000 gallons. We empty that 3 or 4 times a year.
okay, so you actually bring the water in or do you use town water? I'm just,
No, we use town water.
okay,
But we have to collect the wash water when we power wash the
Mhm.
boats, it's probably the most. We power wash like 250 boats in the fall. And that water, as much as it we can, we have to collect. And then we have it pumped and transported off site for
Okay.
processing. I think for the year, I think it's about 3,000 gallons each time, and I think we empty that 4 times a year. That's like 12,000 gallons, and then. We don't fill water tanks anymore because nobody uses the water in the boats, and it all goes stagnant in the tanks, so. They might fill it at the yacht club, they might fill it somewhere else. Most of the boats in my marina are small, we don't have big water tanks.
I guess then my just large overarching question for both projects is, and maybe this is more to buy on. And anyone else who's on the Harbor Advisory Committee or anyone on the select board that's here, where are we at on a harbor plan? So I guess that's. Is there talk, is there discussion? Is that a 1 year, 2 year, is it done? Where are we at on a harbor plan?
So currently with the harbor plan, we have a request for proposal to the Urban Harbors Institute. A harbor master plan will take a year to 2 years to do a proper comprehensive plan. So there's been no money appropriated for one yet. There hasn't been a vote to actually do a harbor plan yet. It's at very beginning stages, and I would expect it to be some time before there's a harbor master plan in place.
Brad, you have a comment?
Yes, Ron, I can just elaborate a little bit more. So the select board has discussed creating a harbor master plan. They are in favor of doing that. And they will be working to get that underway and would anticipate getting it underway probably in the wintertime. Would welcome participation from the planning board on that committee or task force to undertake the creation of the harbor master plan. and would anticipate some seed money coming from professional services line that the select board has, and would supplement that at town meeting in the spring. So we anticipate it getting underway sometime next year.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Foley, any comments?
One question is, have we heard anything from the Harbor Advisory Committee? Have they been asked for their input?
The Harbor Advisory Committee scheduled a meeting for this evening at 5 o'clock, and the topic of a harbor master plan was on the agenda, but due to technical difficulties, that meeting will be moved to next Wednesday.
Do you know if, I mean, have they discussed these expansion plans? Or have an opinion?
It has been discussed. They have not voted any on the topic. So I don't have any recommendation one way or the other from them for anybody.
So I mean, from my viewpoint, it might be nice to invite them to the planning board and get their take on this plan. I guess at this point, I just have one clarifying, on the memo that you sent, you gave the total harbor use fee. Did you say these additional moorings would be 6,000 a year?
Yeah, some of these numbers have been corrected, so the total combined is 25,000,
Okay,
and then that 18,500 is existing, and then 6,800 is proposed. The proposal would generate 6,800.
1,600, okay.
The walkthrough, I thought were you gonna put something together for us? Did I miss that?
Yeah, it was in our packets.
It is? What is it called?
It's a memorandum.
I just looked for it too, and I'm sorry, I just didn't see it.
Could we get those updated numbers at some point?
Yes.
Additional information in a minute.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's all right now, thanks.
Where the new finger slips are going, are they replacing any existing moorings? Or is it just all new? Are there just regular moorings in those areas? Is there a net, gain?
Skip, I think in your case,
We reorganized that cove by its direction. There was plenty of room in the cove. We just tightened up the mooring field, and everything on that mooring, Fine can stand on this. Everything in that mooring field is bow and stern, and we just put everything in a line, so it's a more efficient use of the space. And currently, where we're proposing putting the docks, there is nothing in the way except for Main Streams, that one we call Pony Dock. And that's gonna be relocated in their project.
so it's gonna be 20 new vessels,
Right, but I mean, if there was
Not
3 or 4
everything.
there, it would be 17, that's what I was.
20 new.
It's 20.
So
We haven't eliminated any
Okay.
mooring space.
All right, that was my question.
All the moorings that were in the cove are still in the cove, they're just location.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That's Sarah.
You mentioned that you had filed with NEPA for the, when you did the phase 1, that you, also phase 2 was included in your NEPA filing, but you have to modify that?
Yeah.
Okay.
At that point, it was just a single main float extending onto the harbor. Didn't have finger floats on it.
And was that denied or modified on your special permit, in your special permit
We did not,
application?
we
did.
dropped that design when we went before the local boards. Because he wasn't sure if there was gonna, he just wasn't sure how much money, yeah. So because it was included in the meeting filing, we have to go back and.
Right, okay. I guess my concern is in general, incrementalism is problematic, at least from a conceptual permitting process.
I did confer with NEPA on this, and they suggested the project change.
Okay, and NEPA has a public comment process?
Yes, NEPA has Yeah, for the notice of project change, I believe it's anyone who commented on the project or who received copies of the ENF will receive a copy of the notice of project.
We dialed it back. I don't remember if it was this board or Conservation Commission. Thought the project was too big for them at the time to understand. So we cut it back to a small project at the request of the town of Manchester. I don't know if it's planning board or conservation.
What year was that? You know? When did you, when, I'm just.
Maybe 3 years ago.
I think it was cut back before it came to the planning board.
Okay. And then the other question is the issues around navigation, maybe a question for Bion. Once you get some boats out there on the end of that dock, little boats zooming around. And you have a big, 50-foot boat going into Manchester Marine. Do we still have the maximum depth available in what's the channel? And do you see that there's congestion, traffic is our jurisdiction. We don't usually think about boat traffic, but it's a busy, on a hot summer day, it's a busy place, and it's my experience is that can be quite narrow and so forth. So Brian, I guess I'd like to know if you think there's any detrimental impact on the traffic at its peak times.
Sure. So weekend days, weekend afternoons, when boats coming back in particular. What we don't see from boaters in this harbor is everybody leaving at once or getting back at the same time, unless of course we're talking about the fireworks on the 3rd and 4th of July. I actually feel as though if the cove over there right now has more room for boats to safely stand by and wait to join boats departing or entering the harbor than there was before, with the moorings overwhelming that particular cove. So I don't see any detrimental navigational effects, even on a busy day.
All my questions right now.
Mr. Holly, any questions?
I sort of feel like a duck out of water, asking about questions about the harbor. I do support the idea of a master plan for the harbor. I think that's a great idea. I don't think these projects would affect it. Or I'm sorry, the master plan would affect these projects necessarily. I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Mr. Gilbert, anything?
Have the selectmen offered an opinion on this?
We went to the Board of Selectmen's meeting. They asked a lot of questions, talked a lot at the meeting. They didn't take a vote. They said that they would pass their comments on. I believe that's what they said.
So they don't,
They didn't take a vote.
they don't intend to take a vote?
It's-
It's unclear what they intend.
I'm not clear what the process
Okay.
is, but I didn't realize that we had to go to the board.
Just wondering if they offered an opinion.
Greg, do you have a response to the SB?
Sure, I just elaborate a little bit. So yes, the board did have the applicants in and did have a discussion. They felt that they didn't have any particularly important input to provide. They were focused on, sort of the public good versus private good. Noted a number of the benefits of the project versus the one concern of taking up, obviously using some ocean bottom land, but did not feel that things rose to the point of needing a major comment or vote for you as a board.
Okay, thanks. I'd be curious to hear if the harbor master has any general comments to offer. Do you have an opinion or opinions?
No.
It was, so, right, and I wonder how the board feels. I don't think we need to ask the harbor advisory committee to come in, but Would the board feel about maybe asking them to submit an opinion?
We could.
It could be just in writing, send us a memo before we vote.
Could we possibly get copies of the correspondence, various correspondence
From,
from different, you said you got something from the harbor master and conservation.
yes, I can get you a copy of the harbor master's opinion. Yeah.
Any correspondence that you get from other boards or meetings.
That's all.
Okay, I'll open this up to the public right now. Anybody from the public have any comments or questions? Mr. Starkey.
Yes,
You're on
okay, let me just start.
Your name and can you just state your name and address?
Okay, my name is Jim Starkey. I'm at 13 Tux Point Road. I've had a sailboat in the harbor for 40 years. I live on the harbor. I'm a past chairman of the Harbor Advisory Committee and a past chairman of the Dredging Advisory Committee. And I wrote the harbor bylaw that was passed by town meeting about 10 years ago. I've had a long and deep involvement in the harbor. The thing that is very different from these proposals than almost anything else that you do is that the applicants do not own the land on which they propose to build. They don't own the land. The town does not own the land. The state does not own the land. The land is owned by the people and by the public trust doctrine, which has been part of common law for about 2,500 years and was codified in the colonial ordinances of 1641 to 1647. The ocean and the ocean bottom are a public trust for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Chapter 91 of the Massachusetts General Laws cover what is done, codifies what the public trust is here, and it also designates the DEP as the agency responsible. Chapter 91, Section 18, which I hope you are all familiar with in depth, outlines the licensure requirements for public title lands, which we are talking here. These are public title lands. That the planning board must be notified prior to a filing for a DEP Chapter 91 license. The planning board may hold a public hearing advising the DEP. I'm not sure this is that meeting or not. But it also outlines the decision-making criteria are absolutely explicit. The project must have a, quote, proper public purpose and must not be detrimental to the public's rights to these title lands. That is critical. That is what your job is, to determine if there's a proper public purpose to these projects and whether or not they are detrimental to the public's rights to use title lands. Okay, what does this have to do with boatyards? It has a lot to do with boatyards. Boatyards have a very important public function. They maintain boats, they repair boats, they store boats. They commission them in the spring, they take them apart in the fall. This is very good. No one has any issue with boatyards. And boatyards need moorings, they need floats to manage boats that they're working on. That's fine. And if they use those moorings and the floats, to store other people's boats during the season, that's fine too. Nobody can object that. But we're not talking about boatyards here. We're talking about marinas. Marinas are a completely different beast. They happen to be owned by the boatyards, but they have completely different economics and different legal basis. For example, the DEP establishes very clearly what the public's interest in handing out mooring permits. And specific mooring permits by DEP regulations in Chapter 91. Mooring permits must be assigned fairly from a public and transparent waiting list, that there may be no discrimination by residency for applicants, that there is a cap on what can be charged for a mooring fee, and that no mooring permit can be revoked without proper due process, including the right of appeal to the DEP. A marina in essence, is a way to jump the waiting list. If you're willing to spend $10,000 or $15,000 a year, you don't have to wait on the waiting list. This is not in the public interest. The marinas offer none of these protections to their customers. Their customers on a year-by-year basis, they can kick them out if they don't like them, and they have no recourse whatsoever. So there is not, do not conflate a slip in a marina with a legally awarded mooring permit. Both yards have been accorded moorings in the past for overflow from their floats when they're working on boats, when they're waiting for parts. And they have rented these out for transients. This is completely appropriate and normal. But you know, in the past, it was about 7 or 8 years ago, it was discovered that Manchester Marine was in fact renting out their moorings by the season. Again, so people can pay $5,000 or $10,000 not to have to be on the waiting list and go right to the front. The town, both the Harbor Advisory Committee and then formally by the Board of Selectmen, amended the rules, the harbor mooring rules, to say that this is not permissible, that no one can use a boatyard mooring for more than 2 weeks in a year. And that is just a clear example of what is meant by the public interest. A boatyard has a right to have some moorings, to have floats, and they can rent the floats out, but they cannot use this to jump the mooring list. So the question really revolves around not whether the existing moorings will be displaced. Of course, they can't be, because we couldn't cancel the mooring permit anyway. But whether the projects will prevent the public from getting new mooring permits. And it's absolutely true. We have a harbor that's been maxed out for 45 years. And if you take a large hunk of the harbor and you turn it over to a private entity to turn it into slips, yes, there are going to be people who will not be able to get moorings because we have given that public land to a private entity for private slips. So this is clearly detrimental to the public's right to use these tidal lands. There is no question whatsoever that now that we have instituted shared floating piers or floats for tying boats up, that we could put exactly the same boats on public moorings that would be otherwise slips in a private marina. So there is no question whatsoever about the number of boats in the harbor. None. It is sophistry to say that you can take a hunk of the harbor bottom, give it to a private entity, and that will not have an effect on the public. That's just plain false. So neither of these projects has a proper public purpose as defined by Chapter 91, Section 18. That is the essence of the question. If you do not find that they have a public purpose, and additional tax revenue is not a proper public purpose, then, and if you find that this is detrimental to the public's right to use tidal land, then you really have to turn this down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Starkey. Any other public comments?
Can I ask him a question?
You have a comment?
I have a question for Mr. Starkey. Are you suggesting that this would displace the possibility of the number of public moorings increasing?
Let me find my, okay, I guess I'm not muted. Of course, there will be more moorings there if we don't do this. Of course there will. There's no question at all. If you're going to use additional space for moorings, and I would also point out that the two boatyards want to use not only public tidal lands, but public tidal lands that were dredged at town and state expense for which they did not contribute a nickel. So I have to ask about what are effects for getting state funding for our next dredging project, which is going to be over $3 million, when we've taken 1/3 of what they paid to dredge last time. And rather than making it available to the public, we've walled it off and given it to private organizations who can charge what the market will, so people don't have to sit on a waiting list.
Any additional comments to Mr. Starkey?
I actually have a question.
Christina?
Mr. Starkey, could you, what was the name of the document that you said that you created?
The
Harbor bylaw.
The harbor bylaw?
bylaw, yes. The harbor bylaw establishes that the mooring and waiting lists have to be public. They have to be posted town hall. They have to be posted on the website. And that the harbor master is a full-time position between April and October, during which the harbor master cannot hold any other town position. We did have a big problem with moorings that for 3 years, nobody got a mooring off of the waiting list, but the number of moorings in the harbor didn't go down. This addressed that, and it also opened the possibility for bringing Bion into town. So it was actually rather interesting. The harbor bylaw didn't come up to about for debate until 11:15 at night. Alan, I kind of made a bad call on whether we would go 2 nights or not. It was hotly debated for about half an hour, and it was passed overwhelmingly about 2/3 on a voice vote at 1:45. And so the town is very much behind proper public administration of the harbor.
Sarah?
I'm asking myself if there's a difference between these two proposals. I mean, they are two proposals, but we are thinking of them as kind of collectively, particularly with the navigation issues. I just I can see that the Crockers float doesn't interfere with navigation to the extent that the Manchester Marine one, and we're not talking about the Manchester Marine one right now, but I just pose in your heads whether they have the same public benefit or detriment. The other thing is, I think Jim makes an interesting argument, but I think there's a flip side to that argument, which is if someone is on the waiting list and can get a slip, then the waiting list moves up 1 notch. And somebody who's below the person who gets who's willing to pay for the slip moves to a higher, a closer to having a warrant. So and I guess then the last question is there any public access to either of these? Well, we're talking about Crockers. The Crockers pier, proposed pier that were is there any public access to the pier?
We're not proposing any, you mean coming down all the floating docks?
Whatever, any public access, any.
Not proposed as part of the phase 2, the phase 1. DEP required the boatyard to post signs that allow public passage, which is a requirement, chapter 91. Between, what does the sign say?
High and low.
Between high and low, to walk along the
Yeah,
water.
that's different. It's not higher law.
It's not, so if you, let me just give you an example. If you're proposing a pier off the property, you have to make sure that that pier is high enough, so that if somebody's walking along the shoreline, that there's enough clearance above high water so that they can walk. But public access often is required for it's always required for non-water dependent projects proposed on filled or flood type. So the regulations require access to and along the water for non-water dependent projects. These 2 projects are both water dependent projects. I also want to point out that DEP, Division of Waterways, implements section 18 of chapter 91 law. And when they look at chapter 91 license applications, they consider public benefit, public detriment, public good, and all that in their deliberations. before they issue a license, they have to make those findings.
Chris Holly?
So I'm having trouble understanding what it is we're supposed to be doing here. It seems to me that Mr. Starkey may raise some very interesting points. I'm not sure that's our call here. We're not, is that the DEP that issues the permit, not us?
Yeah.
And we're just advising the DEP as to what found.
The
You have to give a special permit.
The zoning bylaw that was, I don't know when it was adopted, it's the only one I've ever encountered. The chapter 91 regulations, when you prepare a chapter 91 license application, you're required to submit a copy to the planning board. Who, as Mr. Starkey said, can either just receive the license application and not comment on it, or they can comment on it, or they can hold a public hearing. It's at your discretion when you want to do that. In this case, a bylaw was adopted. Usually it just goes to the planning board or whoever represents the town planner. In this case, you adopted the bylaw that said any project subject to chapter 91 license must come before the planning board and get a special permit.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I have a question. Bion, in, I think our conversation at the site walk, you had mentioned that that you're reducing the amount of moorings through attrition, which is contrary to what Mr. Starkey just said, that if these were not a public dock, then we would most obviously have more moorings. So could you touch on that?
I have reduced the number of moorings in the harbor because the harbor is too congested with the majority of the moorings being short scoped. That means the chain is too short for what would be considered mooring tackle standard. So in order to, rather than continue to put boats on moorings that have been surrendered or taken away for failure to use, failure to pay, I've just not reassigned those moorings. It is outside the norm for most New England harbors, where the idea is that you just keep packing the boats in, but it's inappropriate. The harbor, well, the number of people that ask, why do we have fenders hanging off all our boats and what's with the laundry baskets? That's because of property damage caused by boats that are overlapped and they're swinging to such an extreme degree. So the moorings have been reduced in the harbor, everywhere in the harbor, every part of the harbor by attrition. And we will continue to do that until we have appropriate spacing for all vessels. No, as far as the cove goes, no moorings were taken away for anybody's projects. I don't do that. I didn't do it in Kittery. I will never do it as long as I'm a harbor master. Nobody's, whether it's a private dock for a property owner or a commercial facility, mooring holders' rights are sacrosanct. We're not going to allow those to be taken away for anybody.
Two other questions. Bion, given that you've just sort of made the case that the harbor is extremely congested.
Yeah.
How does that square with adding 40 more boats, or whatever the total number is, X Rockers plus Manchester Marine? That's the first question, and then I have a follow-up question.
Right. So as far as the congestion goes, the congestion, as far as moorings go, is something that we can address. We can actually take steps to reduce the number of moored boats that are causing property damage to each other, and eventually be able to allow more appropriate mooring tackle for boats, so that when there's a storm or bad weather, boats can have the appropriate amount of chain. That's different than the congestion that we see from boats coming in to our harbor every weekend, Long Beach or any part of the harbor. And again, if all of our boaters were to leave the harbor and come back in the harbor at the same time, that would be incredibly impactful and, you know,
Well.
need further
I think that's
consideration.
important. I think last summer there was like a sudden squall and everybody did come back into the harbor.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that absolutely, that does.
That's the eventuality okay, the second question is, for Skip and I guess all for you. Do you have public bathroom facilities for your, slip owners?
Yes.
Mantis Marine did that.
Yes.
Okay. So and then is there ever does any of the chapter 91 or special permit conditions ever require the enforcement or a reminder of these vessels that they keep their holding tank active rather than discharging into the,
That's like a state or federal.
I know, but maybe we could, one condition I think I'd be interested in is having a sign that reminds people that that's the case. I think people are,
We're pretty adamant about keeping those things functioning because we don't like working on them.
right, but I think
So, yeah, signs are easy.
That's fine.
signs are easy.
Okay, any other member of the public would like to speak? Greg?
Thank you, Ron. I guess a clarification question to Bayan, if I might. You know, Jim Starkey's comments were very helpful and informative. But it's my understanding that if the marinas are to exist at all, expansion or no expansion, that we would not be putting additional moorings where these floats are being proposed. Is that correct, Bayan?
Right, so that area of the harbor was already terribly congested. First step taken was to convert those moorings to bow and stern. And then final step was to appropriately align them, which would be wonderful to do throughout the entire harbor, but to align them so that the boats don't take up more room than they need to in the harbor. We don't need the boats on moorings to take up more space than they need. I have no intention of assigning any more moorings, new additional moorings in the harbor until all of the swing issues are addressed, scope issues addressed. If we can get those done, then I would absolutely 100% advocate, if spacing was appropriate, to reintroducing those moorings that have gone away due to attrition. So there's no reason that to think that eventually through a harbor master plan, through thoughtful process, that we could not one day increase those numbers. But there are steps that have to be taken first. I don't know if that hit the mark or not.
Well, I was really focusing on the areas right in front of both marinas.
Right. So those are already heavily trafficked areas, and lots of boats coming in and out, particularly in the spring and fall to those two facilities as boats are being launched and hauled. And it was challenging to get boats in and out of those facilities. And I would say, if we look at that area now, that issue's been corrected. We've created ample, appropriate navigational space for vessels to get in and out of those facilities for the service and work that needs to be done. And also, obviously, the boats going in and out of the slips.
On the sidewalk, we talked about baffle walls or something? Is that,
I'm sorry?
did we talk about some kind of baffles being put in on that side, during the sidewalk, or was I mistaken?
Baffles, no. No. The bow and stern moorings that we put in. Converted those moorings to, and then the realignment, that was the necessary thing to do. That part of the harbor right now is probably one of the easier ones to get in and out of, as far as moorings go.
I
Okay.
have one more question.
Yeah, Mary Foley.
You brushed over the parking. Could we get a clear understanding of the, because it's, you need additional parking for what, 20 to 25 cars, 20 cars
6.5 parking spaces.
for 20 slips?
There are national standards, and there's a standard of so many parking spaces per slip. And that equation results in 6.5 parking spaces for 20 slips.
When you take the boats out and put them in the water, you have the storage where the boats were.
Yeah, and I'm just going back to the new, interim town planner's notes, that I just don't want it brushed over, knowing that we have a parking issue downtown, that, for those times where there's still boats in storage and, people need parking. Is it on site? You mentioned something on Bridge Street, some other sites on Bridge Street. I guess just trying to understand if there's clearly parking when needed.
So if the boats are still in storage, people aren't parking to use the slips, because the boats are still in the. So as the boats get launched, it opens up more and more parking. Currently, in my lower yard, we have capacity to store, I'm gonna say 20 boats, and they're all roughly, I think the smallest one down is probably 32 feet. So, which is standard car. We park 20 sailboats, powerboats down there, they're 30 feet long. Plenty of room for parking. I think we can get 25 cars down there on a Saturday. And then the upper yard's almost an acre, and we get 50, 60 boats in there, ranging in size from 26 to 40, 42, 24. So, we're talking, if I rented all my slips, that would be 66 slips. I can park 100 boats, 26 feet or greater on the property, which should usually be able for 66 cars. Keeping in mind during the winter, when all the boats are hauled out, we still have anywhere from 50 to 20 employees parking there every day. Every drives their own car. I'll call it 15, just 5 of guys are in Essex. And there's a small parking lot behind my father's house. It's 7 Ashland Avenue, which I have an easement over, and I think there's parking for 10 cars there. Maybe 8, including his. So what happens in April is we empty the lower yard. We have parking down there on weekends. So by May 1, the lower yard is typically empty, maybe 1 or 2 stragglers. So there's parking during the week down there and during the weekends, and then the parking behind my father's house is reserved parking there during the week. And on the weekends, that's open. And as the boats get launched, there's more parking, more people use them. We take all the trailers, trailer boats all go to Essex, so there's no trailers stored there. We clean the yard, we put the equipment away inside, and maximize the parking as much as we possibly can.
Thank you.
So, I know there was some talk about getting an opinion from the harbor committee. I was wondering if people wanted to continue, or we could move towards a vote tonight. Just trying to get a sense of the board.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Betsy, where you suggested that we might want to continue the hearing, can you explain why?
As the person who writes the decision, I usually don't like the board to write to vote on it the night of the hearing. I don't believe the world is in that much of a rush. My preference is, and this has consistently been my preference for 30 years of land planning, is that the board waits to the next meeting or the following meeting where they have a detailed decision in front of them. And the applicant has a detailed decision in front of them, and you hash out the decision.
So I-
It's much cleaner. It's a legal document that gets filed at the Registry of Deeds. And given some of the idiosyncrasies and you know, kind of shape shifting of various elements of the project, whether it's this project or any project, it just, there's no need to take a vote on the night of the hearing.
So I just support what you're saying. Is there any other information you want? Does the board feel they want to get an opinion from the Harbor Advisory?
We kind of asked for an opinion from the Harbor Committee.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think this approach is very refreshing. Thank you. But I think my understanding, there's only 3 people on the Harbor Advisory Committee. Is that true?
I don't know, do we know how many?
Did 3? There's actually 7
Okay.
members.
I just as we are a board, people have differing opinions, so I would like to hear all the concerns, not just one letter, so I thought there was 3, so my add on that, but maybe they could come versus a letter.
Well, are they predisposed to offer an opinion on this?
I do not know. Certainly, I'll be addressing this with them, bringing up the issue next Wednesday at their rescheduled meeting.
Do you know, Ron?
I can't offer an opinion for them. I don't know.
All right, in lieu of what I've heard, I think we might want to just continue, get an opinion from the Harbor Committee, maybe a detailed opinion of any concerns. So it satisfies the board. I think.
I guess maybe pros and cons, I guess maybe.
Right,
Is
yeah,
that like
any
all?
concerns that are expressed by your committee, if they chose to give us that would be great. Lion. Any other comments from the board? Otherwise, I would ask the applicant to ask for a continuance to November 28th. Send a letter to town clerk by postal mail and a copy by email to the planning board clerk, Gail Hunter, requesting that the public hearing be continued to November 28th at 7 p.m.
Yeah, is that okay with you?
That's our next meeting.
So you need to vote on that.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
I'll take a vote on the request for continuance
Of Crocker's Boatyard.
of Crocker's Boatyard.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, Christina?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, thank
Gail's
you.
on. Oh, yeah, she is.
But
All right, so now we open the. Just a review.
Okay, it's the same, at this time, I'd like to, open the public hearing on a special permit application for a site plan approval from Manchester Marine. Public hearing notice is been duly noticed and advertised in the Cricket as follows, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, the Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 9th, 2022 at 7 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting with public participation. We assume to consider the application of Manchester Marine to install and reconfigure floating docks and create a unit configuration zone at the facility located in Manchester Harbor in accordance with Section 7.5 and 4.1.10J of the zoning bylaw. It's similar to Crocker's Boatyard proposal that adds slip areas to existing docks to the south of their facility. Under section 7.8 of the zoning law, the application and plan was sent with requests for comments to the Conservation Commission, DPW, Board of Health, Police Chief, Fire Chief, and Selectmen. The boards and departments had 35 days to respond. At this time, we had a response from the Police Chief, Concom, and the Harbor Master. The board held a site walk on October 27th. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Susan St. Pierre for the applicants.
And we also have Nicolades here from Manchester Marine.
I'm sorry.
Nicolades,
Okay, welcome.
Manchester Marine General Manager, and Eric Stevenson representing the owner. Okay, so the Manchester Marine, for, I think everyone knows, is right adjacent to the Crocker Boat Yard in Manchester Harbor. So here's the Crocker Boat Yard here, existing conditions, and here's Manchester Marine facility. In this case, we don't have a MEPA filing because it's under the threshold for requiring an environmental mitigation form. But we did have to go before the Manchester Conservation Commission. And we did receive an order of conditions. We also will require a Chapter 91 license to place structures in tidal waters. And we will be required to have an Army Corps for placing structures in navigable waters of the United States. So what we're proposing here is currently this is the main float, as you might recall from the site visit for those of you who were there. Currently, they have linear berthing along that main float. So that linear berthing is going to be replaced with 6 finger piers. 3 of them are 50 feet long, 3 of them are 30 feet long. So these existing vessels that are berthed here will be accommodated in those finger piers. Then the other part of this project is to reconfigure the easterly docks, and I believe you had this plan in your set. So you can see how the existing floating docks are kind of, they're at all different angles and it's not very efficient. So we took this opportunity to do a more efficient layout. And that process is going to create 4 additional seasonal slips in this area. The provision of these finger floats is going to create, let me see here, 3 new seasonal and three new operational slips. So some of these boats are used for their, some of the linear berthing is used for their operations. So the total between the easterly slip and the finger piers is 7 new seasonal slips and 3 new operational slips. So when you add Parker's and this project, we have 27 new seasonal slips. Both projects combined.
Picture here comes out from the middle of the building, goes the one closest to town, goes,
This one?
no, come back to that one, yeah, where's, that's right in the middle of, so is that the gas dock?
The dock is, the gas dock's here, right? A little beyond it, going towards town. That wouldn't interfere with the use of the gas dock or the pump out. So these finger piers will be held in place by 6 12-inch diameter steel pipe piles, similar to the Parker's Boat Yard. And the reconfiguration will include 18 new 12-inch diameter steel. Similar, I mean, the impacts are similar to what I described for the Crocker Boat Yard. It's an appropriate use for the harbor. They're setback from this proposed 70-foot channel, which is shown in hatched lines on your plans, varies in this layout from over 70 feet in this location to 10 feet in this location. This results in a parking demand of 3.3 parking spaces. And Manchester Marine has 2 lots off of Ashland Ave that has adequate parking facility to accommodate 3-4 parking spaces. The average daily traffic is 24 trips. That includes only 0.7 trips during the AM peak hours and 2.1 during PM peak hours. Again, with the facilities taking advantage of the harbor dredging, which is a public infrastructure that the town invested in. I'd also like to say that, contrary to what was said earlier in the meeting, Manchester Marine did invest its own money in dredging along its facility out here when the town did its dredging. So they piggybacked on that and paid for it with their own money. Also, again, it's going to ensure the viability of an important local business in the community. The existing facility and the proposed expansion would generate $17,000 in harbor use fees. The proposed expansion itself is $3,570 per year. This property is larger than the Crockers and they pay $50,000 in real estate taxes. We have 30 local jobs. And again, the excise tax half of the town. And this facility also has secondary economic benefit to other businesses in town. Manchester Marine has 70 people on its wait list. And also is part of the rich maritime history of Manchester. So again, we're seeking your approval for the special permit.
Okay, any comments from the board? Similar to the,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say it's similar to what we just went through with Crockers. And I guess the more I hear, I just want to voice this, that it's hard for 7 planning board members to decide something like this without a harbor plan, without really a town plan. So maybe I'm just struggling with that, but it's hard to, you know, since it is public waters, it's hard to kind of figure out what the master harbor plan is for the town, but.
Yeah, I do also want to mention that, you know, up and down the coast of Massachusetts, there are marinas everywhere. And they all have to be licensed through the state. If they weren't appropriate, they wouldn't be licensed. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was going to make a couple points. You know, town character is one of the master plan issues, and I think this cuts both ways on town character. Town character, when you come into Manchester from, you know, some other place, it's a very quaint little harbor, and you know, and just it's double counting, by the way, for say an excise tax and restaurant revenue, probably because the people who are paying excise tax presumably live nearby. But anyway, so I think that the town character is less marina and more harbor. But that said, to service the boats in the harbor, we need robust, healthy boat yards who will be here and not, you know, sell to a senior housing or whatever. You know, no, I said that tongue in cheek, tongue in mask. So this represents a commitment of these 2 boat yards to the use that serves this quaint harbor, this hurricane hole harbor, sort of. So I think that those are 2 things that I struggle with. The question I have is, you have a pump out on Manchester Marine's dock. Is that yours, or is that is there a public? I know anybody can use it, but is that paid for with public money, or is that just yours? How does that work?
So we could apply for reimbursement from the state, but we haven't in a number of years. We've just been running it at our own expense. And those pump outs are still free to the general public and to any of our customers, including the town.
Okay,
It's just it's the process to apply for reimbursement requires you to log all these hours and everything. And it's just, it's been too cumbersome to be worth our while.
so 2 questions. Is that the only pump out in town? Baya?
That's the only shore side. The other pump out is the boat.
Okay,
And we do pump out at Manchester Marine.
okay. And I guess the question is, could we can make it, maybe it's a question for Betsy or either of these proposals, could we make hosting a pump out in perpetuity a condition of our approval? Because that is a public benefit.
Did you say posting?
Conditioning a pump out facility on these piers, either continuing at Manchester Marine in perpetuity, or, you know, for 20 years or whatever it is. And maybe the addition of one at Crockers. I'm just it's a question because I am struggling a little bit with the public benefit. And I do think that the pump out that Manchester Marine has is a public benefit. So I would want to see that continued. It's going to get squeezed a little bit here with this dock, I think, but So,
Well, even the harbor master uses the pump out at Manchester Marine to pump out the pump out road.
so it has a
you can't
public
get it the
benefit.
way of that boat either. I mean,
Right.
whatever they're doing is good.
Right, I guess my point is there is a public benefit along this pier that is important to acknowledge.
You have, you want to.
We already have the pump
So
out, so
Skip,
it's
Skip would
fine
need
with us.
to speak to the party, he
Yeah.
doesn't install the infrastructure to it. Yeah, but that's.
That's a bigger thing. I mean, it may be that we don't need two right next to each other. I'm just,
Yeah,
thinking out loud.
To give it, I think Marblehead has 2, and they have 3,000 boats.
Yeah,
You have 600 boats in the harbor.
Salem has none, they have a pump out boat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
but I do think that the existing pump out at Manchester Marine is a public benefit that's worth acknowledging.
I think we said that in our original. Final. Yes, thank you very much.
Gary, it's like, yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning that, I applaud both of your businesses. It's really great that you're thriving. I hope you're thriving and that you're here. And I have a question for Greg. If we didn't have this bylaw, which compels the planning board to review this, which I really feel is not part of our bailiwick, who would be reviewing this?
So the two different processes. So it's before you now as as a site plan review process, special permit.
The
But-
harbor master receives copies of chapter 91 licenses.
Right, so the chapter 91 process is separate, and that allows people to comment. So different boards would have that opportunity. Once they file for the chapter 91, chapter 90, DP will announce the application's been received and they've opened up the comment period. And any board in town can provide comment regarding, again, the public benefit for using ocean bottom land. So this is unique to Manchester, as I think Ms. St. Pierre mentioned at the beginning. Most towns do not have a separate permitting process for Chapter 91 projects.
Well, for whatever it's worth, I think this should be on our list of bylaws that we might want to revise / eliminate. I really think this is out of our territory, and I really feel it should be something the selectmen weighs in on, because they manage the town. This is a management and economic issue. There's a lot of issues, but they're not really the kinds of issues that is our expertise. That's just my opinion.
Right, so that's a separate process, and the select board may very well comment to DEP through the Chapter 91 process. Different set of criteria than what you have here before you tonight.
Okay, Christina.
So, I was on the board a few years ago when you came and, I think the scope of that project was a little bit smaller. So I don't think the same questions came up. And I heard phase 1, phase 2. How many phases are there? Are we at the end or are we still going?
That's my project.
Okay,
Manchester Marine, you're talking. this is
all right,
Manchester
sorry.
Marine.
Can I ask that question if it's a different hearing?
I think we're on Manchester Marine. What are you trying to ask?
I think that's a good question.
She's asking, will this, is this
Is this the beginning of a bigger?
everything they're gonna be doing?
Yeah.
For now and forever.
Yes.
You don't have any additional plans.
Also, the creation of this 70-foot channel is gonna kind of dictate what it's setting a boundary.
Right.
It's not really, I mean, it's, as I mentioned at the site visit, there's no really designated channel, but maybe the town could adopt it somehow. I'm not sure how that would work, but
Could someone speak to? I guess, are we transferring? What are we deciding to do? That you can use this public land in perpetuity for 100 years? Like, what does this decision look like? Betsy, can you look at that, or
unfortunately,
what are we deciding?
Well, we're deciding based on.
Okay, I didn't ask you. I was asking Betsy or Kristen.
We're giving a special permit,
I understand that,
so we're deciding on that criteria specific.
but that's not my question.
So from my perspective, I can think of a half a dozen communities that require the planning board to grant special permits for water related uses. So this is not unique to Manchester. Whether you agree with it or not, or whether,
So we're allowing,
is it's right now, it's in your bylaws, it's in a number of other communities' bylaws. Your role is to take an overview based on what you know of the harbor and what everybody else who's commenting knows of the harbor. And whether you think it's germane and appropriate use for this expansion. Whether there's sufficient public benefit, knowing it at a local level. And you also need to understand that there's a number of hoops that, you know, Ms. St. Pierre has pointed out about the other permits that are needed. So I think you as a board have to look at public benefit. You have to take the advice of the Harbor Committee and the Harbor Master in terms of whether they think it's appropriate. And whether it's, your master plan has talked about economic stimulus and increased commercial operations. Both of these boatyards have been in operation here for a long time. So those are all the things that you need to weigh.
So I guess specifically, is there a time frame? Are we allowing them to use this public area in perpetuity forever or 100 years? Or that's my specific question. Is there a
Okay.
time frame that we could condition this permit? Is that I don't know.
I don't think it's normal to condition it for a limited period. I know there are some special permits that communities put a limit on in terms of time frame. I think they're making a financial commitment here. So I think to some degree, it's pretty unfair to say, oh, you can only do this 2 years or 5 years
Absolutely,
or
but is there
whatever.
like a
Right.
lifespan of the dock? So
Right.
that's,
Right.
Can I say the chapter 91, so the chapter 91 license will impose a 30-year term,
okay, that's, there we
which
go.
can be renewed, but the initial license will be a 30-year. They used to be
That's what I was looking
licensed
for. Thank you.
forever, but they've changed.
Thank
that.
you. That's exactly what I was looking
You have a comment, Nicole?
Yeah, just for consideration, I'm not gonna speak to that more technical stuff, that's above my pay grade, but you know, if you look at where the slips are, because of our current use, you know, you wouldn't be able to put moorings or anything there.
No.
So it would be a decision between, you know, not allowing us to do it would be a decision that you just don't want anything.
Yeah.
You know, there's not another option.
Not a trade-off for more.
So what is the lifespan of a dock?
In terms of where we would have to rebuild.
Correct.
We were getting 30 out of the dock before we put the pressure treated. The hardware wears up before the lumber, so.
But it's really the piers are the big, you know.
Pile.
Piles, yeah.
Yeah, they last
So if there
a long
was
time.
some issue, we needed to correct it.
But their chapter 91 license requires, it demands they maintain that pier.
Yes.
So they're gonna put something in and they're gonna maintain it for as long as they can get a decent lifespan out of it. And as long as the pier is, you know, doesn't get, if the pier gets damaged, they have to fix it.
Additionally, the harbor master, if he sees it, something, a dangerous situation, he can.
I'm just saying, if the people in 25 years decide that this wasn't a good decision, they can correct it with a 30-year period. But my time period was wondering, what are our rights as a community to take back if we ever did need to? That was really my question. Have you ever seen that?
Well, wouldn't it be, it's a 30-year term to be renewed by the DEP, not back to the town?
Yeah, I can't remember, but I assume that there's probably public notice as part of that renewal, so people could comment again, but I'd have to check, but I'm pretty sure that is.
If our rules were the same, I would think that they would come back again.
I'm looking at our future site plan review cases and our current, I have two other issues that I think if Laura were here, she would say, given that you're adding additional cars, could you add bike racks? This is something to think about. And the other thing that I'm not finding in our new ones, but I says, oh yes, outdoor lighting standards. So in our current bylaw, we have lighting somewhere, regulation. limited of noise, light and odor. In our proposed, we have the shielding of light fixtures, light trespass, light intensity, color efficiency. One question I would have it's not really germane to the special permit at hand, and I understand that. But Manchester Marine has a high intensity floodlight that you can see from all over at night, from all over the downtown. And it's not a best practice to have a unshielded light in today's world. I mean, most building codes now would require you to have a dark skylight. So I just suggest that perhaps you consider upgrading that light to a cutoff light that is doesn't have so much light trespass out from your property.
We'll look into that. And report back on
Notice, everybody drive, when you drive out of here, go notice, and it is a beacon.
that.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't light your
Yeah,
dogs
there were
or
significant security issues, but yeah, we'll look into that.
the trespass, light trespass is the issue. It's not on your dog, so it's on your building. It's probably not, but yeah, Ron, Betsy has a question or a comment.
Oh,
I have a
sorry.
question. So you've added these slips that are coming out toward the channel.
Yes.
What is where the gas dock and the pump out are? What is the space, the dock space you have, the length of it for both those elements? So you've got a gas dock there and you've got a pump out.
Probably 60 feet. I don't have a scale on. Does that sound about right?
We have 60 feet set aside, kind of designated as a fuel dock, but there's probably more like 80 to 100 feet there that's usable. But we can only service one boat at a time. So
Right.
we really only need the one.
Okay.
I asked for any public input. Public input. Okay, so I think what we'll do is the same thing. We'll look for a Harbor Advisory Committee opinion, continue to the 28th. If that, if we'll vote that, do the same thing, send a letter and email. I'll ask the board for a motion to continue the public hearing to November 28th.
So
Yeah. Your second,
A second,
roll call, Gary?
yes.
Yeah.
yes,
Gary.
Yes.
Can I answer a question? I'm sorry.
6 to,
The Harbor Advisory Committee, we're gonna try to get that for the committee.
I think Brian said they're meeting next week,
Okay.
I think. And I think maybe you may want to go to that or listen in, I don't know.
Yeah, the country, but maybe.
I think I'll be there.
Oh,
Okay.
you remember?
Yeah.
Oh.
Don't buy it.
You'll have to recuse yourself. You'll have to recuse yourself.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a good night.
thank you.
I
okay.
think it's the Harbor Advisory Committee meet from home.
I'm gonna have to be on back on that. So you're literally gonna put it Monday night.
I love that.
Okay.
Push it till next
That's
week.
my one day. I'll come back and I will do the minutes. You know what, Mick?
One thing I'm finding out is communication. That's not great.
Call in.
You gonna help me call me?
Yeah, so okay, so all we're doing is minutes, right?
Yeah, minutes.
All right,
And then we just wanted to talk about if we need to meet on,
Yeah.
the-
all right.
what's
So
happening.
I'll.
All right. So, Sarah's we're gonna, Sarah's gonna recuse herself from this. At this time, I'd like to open the public hearing on the special permit application for a site plan approval for the Manchester Department of Parks and Recreation. Public hearing notice has been duly noticed and advertised in the Cricket in as follows in accordance with the Mass General Law 40, Chapter 48. Section 11, the Manchester by the Sea Planning Board will hold a public hearing on November 9th, 2022 at 7 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting with public participation to resume to consider the application of Manchester Parks and Recreation to construct an athletic field parking lot on Pine Street in accordance with sections 6.9 and 10.3.5.2B of the zoning bylaw. The proposal from Manchester by the Sea Parks and Rec is to construct a youth athletic field with 25 parking spaces on the site of the old burn dump at 156 to 160 Pine Street. The site has been remediated in accordance with Mass DEP standards. The facility will provide much needed relief from Mascanoma Park, Sweeney Park, as well as school sports facilities, all which receive a significant amount of use. Under section 7.8 of the zoning bylaw, the application of plan was sent with request for comments from the Concom, DPW, Board of Health, Fire Chief, and Selectmen. The boards had 35 days to respond. At this time, we received response from the police chief's office. No other responses have been received. The board held a site walk on October 27th. And for the applicant, who is presenting, Nate?
Hey Ron, how you guys doing? And we have Cheryl Marshall on as well.
We can probably skip right to you, Nate.
If you can give me control, I can put up some presentation materials.
That would be up to, see, I don't have host.
Oh, Gail.
Host.
I can do that. Hold on just a minute.
Thank you, Greg.
So while we wait a minute for Greg, I was just going to start out with, for anybody who's not aware of the whole Pine Street project, the way the athletic field project came up is, the overall town master plan that this board did, the planning board, a lot of hard work between 2016 and 2018. And then that led to the shortage of athletic fields was one of the things that showed up. So then the Parks and Rec Committee did the Parks and Rec athletic field master plan. And after looking everywhere, basically the only space in town was this Pine Street area that we know used to be the old burn dump. And in many towns and many places, this is a great use for that area that has laid dormant for a long time. So now I'll turn it over to Nate.
So we have enlisted Weston & Sampson as the consulting engineer to develop the plans and specifications for this project. We've gone through a number of public meetings for the project, solicited feedback from the community, from a lot of the direct abutters. We've gone through Concom, as it is the existing burn dump, there was definitely some concerns in that regard. The site has an AUL, which is an activity and use limitation, which basically stipulates what can and cannot be done on the site, and that's issued by DEP. Athletic fields is one of the approved uses for the site. Concom, we have direct wetlands that are on the site, so that is kind of one of the main things that limited the size of the field and what we were working, I shouldn't say against, but that's basically, we went as far as we could. We made the field as big as possible without going into the 30-foot no build zone or no disturb zone. So as you can see on the screen, this is kind of a general layout of the field and the parking lot. Mostly going to be used for U10, I believe. Is that what we're saying, Cheryl?
Yes.
So mostly smaller kids as a practice to take really away the burden from some of the other fields like Masco that are getting heavily used, and also in preparation for the next Sweeney field upgrade that we are currently under design for as well. Because once that goes into construction, we're going to lose that for likely a couple seasons. Playing season. So we're going to need to supplement with fields elsewhere. Here's a profile of the overall field. So showing kind of the drainage, we have a general 2% slope on the field going to either side. On either side, we have the wetland buffers. And from basically from the wetland buffer up to the field is a 3-to-1 slope, which was allowed us to maximize the field. On the slopes, we're going to be planting with a pollinator mix, as approved by Concom. Here are some kind of screenshots or some photos of the existing site as it is now. Mostly just vegetation that DPW mows, I believe, once a year to make sure there's nothing growing into the existing liner. This is the current plan set as we went through at the site walk. I'll go to the parking lot and materials plan here. This is a good one. So as I said, we have 25 parking spots, which is including an ADA accessible spot, which will allow anyone to get up onto the field that is located right here. One comment that Ms. Tenney made during the site walk was to revise the walkway up to the field. We initially had it kind of hugging the parking lot, and it exceeded the 5% grade that would require a handrail. It was still under the 10%, for ADA, but it did require a handrail. We modified it to do more of a serpentine route up, which kept it below the 5%, which does not require a handrail. We added some plantings, some small shrubs in this area to also kind of help fill it in and make sure, kids aren't cutting through this area right here or anyone cutting through there and kind of trampling it over time. We also have one tree located right here. I believe that's a red maple. This is the current plant list right here. So it's a mix of red maples. We have some green giant arborvitaes along the back, some white pine and some pin oak. And then the shrubs are common witch hazel and the arrowwood viburnum. There. And so you can see these, the green giant arborvitae and the white pines are all along the back here to provide screening for one of the direct abutters. Cheryl and I met with him on 2 occasions, and this was really to help alleviate the sight lines from his residence right down onto the field and help to provide some screening for him, as these plantings grow. And we also, looking at these to meet the 1 tree per 5 parking spot requirement that is in the bylaw. So the other aspect is that, so this is going to be a paved parking lot. All the drainage is going to go to 2 catch basins that are located on the entrance to the parking lots on each side. Those will tie into an existing catch basin that we are going to renew and slightly shift to accommodate this walkway. And that ties into the existing stormwater system that is in Pine Street. A little better shown right here. So any runoff that's coming from the parking lot is not going into, so this is all granite curb surrounding the parking lot. And that's all going to be captured and go down to these 2 catch basins and then out. I think the other kind of major thing that we've been talking about, and we certainly heard throughout the public meetings, was pedestrian access, and how do we make sure the site is accessible for our kids to walk to, and be confident that they can have access. So we had discussed, and part of our plan was to make this sidewalk. Oop, am I sharing the wrong screen here? There we go. We are gonna, this current sidewalk ends just at Moses Hill. So our plan is to extend the sidewalk, asphalt sidewalk with granite curbs, down to the opposite end of Moses Hill, and then do a crosswalk, basically, which ties into where the new serpentine path will lead up. I had our DPW's on-call traffic engineer review this plan. We looked at site distances for approaching from both sides in the road, and then site distances, sightline distances from exiting the parking lot. Their review noted that if we assume, and I should know, it's posted 25 miles an hour. And, one of the main comments from residents was that, that is not the speed cars generally travel. So we assumed that when we reviewed the sightlines, when our engineer reviewed the sightline, she assumed that it was a 85th percentile for 35 miles an hour, which would require a stopping distance of 250 feet. If you assumed it went up to 40 miles an hour, that increases to 305 feet. So when she looked at it, she noted that there are no sightline issues coming outbound. But she did note that there is one minor sightline issue on the inbound side before you get to the existing entrance due to kind of some foliage and shrubs that have grown into the kind of the sight line right through here. So one item she said that could address that is the addition of the activated pedestrian signs. So as we were already planning to include those, we basically met that requirement. One deviation she did recommend, from this plan that as I have laid out on the screen, is just moving the pedestrian crossing sign ahead back a bit further into the 250 to 300 foot range. So I have them, a bit closer than that, so this outbound one would more likely move, to the very entrance of, or slightly before the Moses Hill. And then on the opposite side, it would go further out towards 128. Another item that she said we could include is yield arrows or shark teeth, as they're sometimes called. And that, provides another visual, warning that there is crossing coming up. From any way you're coming, inbound or outbound, you'll very clearly see the activated flashing signs. From any distance. From the inbound side, you can see them basically from Rockwood Heights, which is the state DPW yard, and on the outbound side, you can see it well before you get to Moses Hill. I think that pretty much covers, everything that we've talked about on the site walks and, major concerns that, we heard from residents and throughout the course of the project. So can open up to questions and comments.
Yeah, Nate, it's Ron. The sidewalk, is that Bitconk sidewalk you're proposing on the?
Correct, yes, asphalt sidewalk with vertical granite curb.
Will there be a curb? Okay, so there'll be a curb, so there's some protection.
Yes.
Okay, and what about removing some of that brush on that site distance? In addition to the.
Yeah. Sorry, we can certainly trim, the DPW can certainly trim that back as, just as a housekeeping item.
Okay. All right, and questions from the board, Chris Oldman.
Nate, is there lighting, any kind of lighting in this parking area?
There's going to be no lighting proposed for the field at all. Basically, due to the kind of myriad of issues, all the abutters, we're certainly not in favor of lighting. And then with the being the old bird nump, we could only go down 12 inches. So there's no way to do a foundation, the foundation necessary for any type of field lighting.
Okay. And how did you determine the number of parking spaces?
Basically, we maximized what we could get on the site. It was kind of a compromise between, filling out the field size, kind of building in, as I noted before, the kind of working from the buffer zones with 3-to-1 slopes up to field level, and then kind of making that rectangle, and then working, as it's not a perfectly square site, kind of working with a bunch of different configurations to try to figure out, how we can maximize parking.
There's overflow parking too across the street, I think you said.
Is there overflow parking?
There's going to be no overflow parking. I think we are thinking that if there is a need, we would look to the shoulder of Pine Street where there is quite a bit of shoulder to accommodate that.
What about where we parked for the site visit? What was that?
That's just going to Moses Hill.
Yeah, that's Moses Hill. The residents, I think, would be very weary of that. They did express concern about that during the public meeting. So I don't think, kind of akin to Forest Street and the pickleball court, I think we want to stay away from parking there.
Mary?
So I guess along the parking question, is there a industry standard for fields based on the size of the field? So there's going to be X amount of kids playing. I understand the space is confined, so that's how you did parking, but are we trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, and are we accommodating enough parking?
It is a little bit also based on industry standard of that size field. So it's assuming like 2 teams of 12 and 25 spots, which we know that's never exactly right. But yes, at one point when the engineers were working on it, they did mention a smaller parking lot. And at that point I said, then, forget the whole project. If we don't have at least 25 spots, then we don't have a field as far as I was concerned. And that's when the field had to shrink a little to make sure we did have at least 25 spots.
Okay. I know you mentioned the runoff from the parking lot. Where is the runoff going in the back that goes towards neighbors? And then so there's one side that has a neighbor there, I think, and then in the back, and then there's the wetlands in my head. But yeah, so is there any plan for runoff, or is it just?
No, it should all infiltrate, as it does now. It's going to be a grass field, so we are specifying a bit of a sandier soil mix that should help stimulate growth for the field, but also help with that drainage to make sure it does infiltrate and we're not pooling up there. I think, one of the previous slides, we do have a slight slope on the field to help promote that, so you're not getting standing water, but everything should infiltrate, as it does now, and especially on, the 2-to-1 slopes where this is going to be, pollinator mix, long, tall flowers, wild flowers, so that's really going to help absorb everything. And then you're into the wetlands here already, basically to the corners of the project here.
And then just another quick question, is the expanded sidewalk part of this project cost, or is that a separate cost?
So it's not going to be bid with this project. The DPW has an on-call paving contract where we, basically get more commodity pricing. So we'll be doing, quite a bit of sidewalk work and paving next spring. So it only makes sense to really include this sidewalk work with that work where we'll get better pricing. But the cost of it will come from, what's been allocated for the field. Does that make sense?
No, because I think at the beginning you said it wasn't part of the project cost, so.
Correct. It's not part of the bid project. So the contractor that does the work on the field will not construct the sidewalk. However, the funds that pay for the sidewalk are coming from the funding for the field.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Gary or Christina, any questions? Christina?
I do. So you said that you had correspondence with your parking engineer and your traffic engineer for sightlines. Is there a formal report? Can we be given a copy of that?
No formal report at this time. It was more of a desktop exercise to look at it. We could certainly put something together, but their opinion was that, just based upon what is already proposed, if you didn't meet those sightline distances, we are doing what that would be already, essentially. We're already with the belt and suspenders, with the activated beacons, and additional signage.
I guess that was really my only concern when I visited the site. I mean, I, as a grown adult, was pretty nervous crossing that street, so I can't imagine a 10-year-old riding a bike being as diligent as maybe I am. So I guess as the activated beacons, I know I have one on the corner of my street, and it honestly rarely works. But one that I do like is on Route 62, that big bike trail downtown Danvers.
Yeah.
That one is really in your face, and as much as I do not like these activated beacons, I really am adamant that this one really needs to be in your face. I'm really concerned about children crossing the street. I haven't seen anything that you've proposed, and the last time that these were coming up around town, I thought that maybe the planning board should have had a little bit of input on that, just to make sure our character, whatever that means, is consistent. So do you have something in mind?
Not specifically that I can share right now. I think we were thinking using the same one that is at Lincoln Street. That style. We can certainly go to. I'm not familiar with the one on Route 62, but I could certainly see what.
Not 97. There might be one on 97, but there's definitely one downtown Danvers that is very effective.
Yeah, we can certainly, it's open right now of how we can spec it. So I can take a look at that one, and if that's, what the planning board would like to put there, that's certainly something that we can do.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple things. What's the width of Pine Street there compared to the minimum width that we have to maintain?
I'm not, give me 2 seconds. I don't know that off the top of my head, the actual width, but if I can measure quickly.
Because I'm talking about traffic slowing measures. I've often thought, instead of just throwing speed limits on that street, if we had just painted the lines closer together and made it a more narrow street, that already slows down traffic. The width of that street's so wide, it encourages higher speeds.
You talking about the fog lines?
What do you call them?
Fog lines.
Yeah, narrowing the lanes. We have implemented that in other areas of town. I think it's hard in this location, just kind of given the kind of narrow section of it, or the limited area compared to the overall width or the overall length of Pine Street. It'd be a much larger project to go back and reline that large of an area of Pine Street.
Okay, well, it does sound like there's some impracticalities there, but it could be part of what could be considered. What about school bus pulling off? Are you accommodating or anticipating one or even two school buses to pull over under the shoulder of the, I assume it's non-paved there, right? Of the sidewalk area?
We're not expecting school buses to use this field anyways.
Ever?
Well, it won't be for high school level sports. So, no.
Is it a practice field?
I know it's not a standard field. Maybe the parks. And I'm not sure who just spoke. I can't even see.
Sorry, that was Cheryl Marshall.
Oh, okay. You don't anticipate there ever being a school bus to bring kids there?
I do not.
Okay. All right.
So it looks like we have 12-foot lane widths there with 3-foot shoulder on the outbound side and 2-foot shoulder on the inbound side. So call it 30 feet overall, total road width,
What's the minimum? Just so I know.
11 feet.
Okay, so there will be probably informal overflow parking on the sidewalk zone there on the shoulder of the road.
On the inbounds. The other side of the sidewalk
On the out,
with a curb,
With the curb.
what he said, so no parking. Only on the inbound side, I would think,
Correct,
Yeah.
yep.
Kids
and that's only got a 2-foot shoulder, he's saying, so.
Paved shoulder. There's more area that's, kind of gravel off the shoulder, kind of before you get to the actual tree line there.
So you could park there.
I mean, I just think realistically, we should anticipate that and accommodate as much as can. We know a lot of people are not gonna wanna go into a dead end parking lot to try to drop off their kids. A lot of people are gonna cruise by, drop and go.
Mhm.
That's just reality. And it can be accommodated, but if there's anything we can do to accommodate it better, we should scrutinize.
We'll definitely be reaching out to the leagues that permit the fields to discourage that. But as a drop and go, you're right, that may happen, but they probably won't be parking there. And we'll discourage that with the leagues.
Yeah, maybe a sign, drop off, no parking, I don't know.
Well,
It's
it's,
just something to consider in a special permit hearing. You might have a sign saying drop off only. You might not, you might want to just simply say no parking to not even encourage dropping off. They're gonna drop off and go. That's just how it's gonna function. I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
There's signage you want to take into account or any changes to that shoulder in terms of materials. Whatever.
Yeah, if there was drop off, it would probably be where we parked for that site visit, I would think, and then walk across the street.
Nothing else.
But even then,
Yeah,
it's
when
kind of,
when we were at that site visit, I mean, people did not go less than 40
it
miles
was
an hour.
pretty quick. It was a little
And-
scary.
So I kind of equate it to Sweeney, right, on Summer Street, and people don't go that fast on that section of Summer Street because it's, I don't know why, but
It's close to town. It's
it's closer.
also close to town.
So I don't think you, at Sweeney, you have that same issue of driving, dropping on the street and going. You definitely pull into Sweeney, drop off, go.
well, the other thing is that people are going to the field are becoming outbound, not inbound. So they'd have to turn around, which they're not gonna wanna do. So my guess is they are gonna pull in the parking. area.
They're
They
gonna
might
pull
turn
on to-
around in Moses Hill and drop their
Exactly.
kid off.
Right.
Yes,
That's what I
the
was
kids, the
thinking.
people at Moses Hill are gonna start getting
Come in
pissed
through
off.
that little piece and then go home.
Yeah, so isn't there beyond Moses Hill, isn't there a small street there?
Yeah, there's another street that
And
goes
so
up.
what's the likelihood of people parking there?
Good point.
It's like a small private road. I think it's a private road.
It's up to people.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it's private or public, but
Public road.
so Nate, beyond Moses Hill, on the same side as Moses Hill, there's a street beyond it.
Yep.
What's the likelihood of people parking there for overflow parking, and B, swooping into Moses Hill if they're coming outbound and just doing the loop at Moses Hill, dropping their kid off and then turning around and going back inbound?
Well, actually, it's a loop. That road is a loop.
Yeah, I think similar to Moses Hill, we would certainly post no parking signs, for the field on Harrington Way, to eliminate that. Harrington Way. I don't know what we could do to prevent, pulling into Moses Hill and, stopping people from do that. You do see people do that already, to reverse direction. This would certainly be more of it, potentially. But yeah, outside of signage, I'm not sure what you could do to eliminate that.
Drop off and there's no parking sign.
Yeah, I mean, signs are only gonna go so far. I think it's a tricky spot is my concern with the speed that people go.
Is there any, I'm sorry, is there any calming measures that you could put before the crosswalk?
I don't think we would want to put any sort of like speed bump or speed table or anything to that effect, because I think it'll be an auditory disturbance, you know, for a majority, or, you know, full time for the residents that are there, and especially for, you know, the portion of the year that the field is not in use. And then it's also going to be a plowing issue during
So if it's
during the
not
winter.
necessarily a speed bump, but some kind of something different kind of pavement rumble, I guess the rumble strip would make noise, right?
Yep. So we could do the, you know, the what I mentioned earlier, the yield triangles, or, you know, they sometimes called like, they look like shark teeth, you know, that are another kind of visual. It's, you know, just painted triangles on the ground.
Could you bulge the fog lines a little bit, Nate, so that it just tightens up just when you get to the crosswalk?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Chris.
Can you bulge in the fog line so you make it narrower set of lanes just at the crosswalk, not all of them?
I think that would be hard, given so it is a 12-foot lane now. I think we could only go down to an 11, and I think that would be very awkward for that one kind of section of the road. I don't see it reducing speeds, you know, that significantly, if at all.
I have one last thing, and it's just, since they are 10-year-olds, one idea was some kind of protection if there was a storm and parents needed to come. I know parents aren't far, but is there, I know you can't dig down, but maybe just some kind of like seasonal, like those. Yeah,
The bus stop thing?
well, maybe a bus stop thing, but more like a tent. So rain, lightning, sun, like those. It almost look like sails, but they're like pegged in the ground somehow. But if you can't go down, I'm not sure if that's reasonable. Does that make sense?
Yep, yeah, that would be definitely the issue, is we couldn't do any sort of foundation for that. I think it'd have to be more of a freestanding structure. We don't have currently anything in the plans for that, but I don't know if that's you know, we could look into something like that. Or I don't know if Cheryl has used other things like that elsewhere.
Have not, no. The first time it's come up, but we can look into that for sure.
Sorry.
Not umbrellas.
Okay, any comments from the public? I don't see any hands up. Same thing here. I think we'll continue. Do we need any further information from the DPW?
I mean, I would like to see those reports.
Nate, if you can get the reports.
Which reports?
Definitely traffic, and then the other one was parking. Sightlines and parking.
Were those memorialized, or were they just?
I did.
No,
Well.
sorry,
Nate,
sorry, go.
You sent me an email late today on site distances.
Yep.
So that can be included. Trying to think of what else. So maybe if you provided a little more information, I mean, that's gonna be a standard pedestrian light.
Yeah, if you could find out a more of a larger beacon for the pedestrian crossing.
Okay.
You could maybe take a ride up there, or I don't know where this one's located, but maybe you can do it by Google Earth. I don't know.
I'm sure we can get that info.
Yep. Yeah, the sightlines was just a desktop exercise. Yeah, so it wasn't they did not issue a memo or anything along those lines. And same for the parking. It was really looked at within the scope of this project for the parking. They didn't do any, analysis of the parking.
So I guess if this was not a town project, we would ask maybe for peer review. So I guess for us to rely on that, maybe we can memorialize that. We were relying,
How about if we ask for how many parking spaces are in Mascanoma Park?
I just really would like to know what the industry standard is versus what we're approving. Like, I mean, we're just kind of going
I
with
thought
what.
she already stated what the industry.
Probably
standard
do it
was.
by a flyover.
I'll get a
Cheryl,
chart.
I thought Cheryl very clearly specifically stated the industry standard, stated that they made the parking lot to comply with.
No.
I don't think she
No,
did
she
say
said
that
she
at all.
did it.
I'll get it. I can get a chart.
Thank you.
Yeah,
The chart is.
She did not. She said she only wanted-
Square feet.
If it was gonna be 25 spaces. Did not say that.
It's gonna be like 5 spaces.
I'm not sure the Mascanoma Park comparison is a fair comparison because you've got a lot of boaters using that.
Well,
And
Sure,
playground.
but if it's adequate for the playing fields.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
Sweeney might be better.
Neither of those parks were
Defined
ever,
to the public.
This is
Sweeney
kind of-
definitely doesn't have any parking.
Nice hard parking there.
Cheryl, I'm not judging. I just wanted something to say, this is what we looked at. We analyzed it. You did the best that you could with the site, just so our file is complete.
yep, the engineers do that, but I'll see what I can get specific.
But usually we would get some kind of a report from them.
Think about it, then.
Hmm?
Think about it.
Absolutely, yeah. We just saw what we said that we relied on something.
So do we want to have a motion to continue this?
Yes, I'd like to have a motion to continue the public hearing to November 28th, which I'm scheduling now 3 again. Same day. We'll have the time. At 7 PM.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, Christina.
Yes.
Ms. Foley.
Yes.
Ms. Solly.
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert.
Yeah.
6-0. Well, if she were back, she could comment on the trees. Okay, same deal, town clerk, postal mail requesting an extension and an email to Gail Hunter requesting the extension.
This isn't an extension, it's
Ah,
a
The
continuance.
continuance.
So they shouldn't have to ask for
Hmm.
anything. For continuance. This board has continued it to a time and date
Well,
certain.
then that's different than what our former secretary told us.
Oh, I'll bring you Mass General Law for the next meeting.
Send it to Helene.
Pardon?
Ron, what we used to do was to ask the applicant for their permission to continue it so that we were not, that extended the time frame we had to make a decision. And we used to have them sign a little form saying they give permission.
It has something to do with the clock, I think, yeah.
Well, you have 90 days to hold a public hearing on. You're allowed 90 days from the opening of the public hearing,
Make a decision.
so
Okay.
you're well within your time frame.
Okay,
But we used to do that just in case we went further, just to give us more than 90 days. If the applicant agrees, we used to just get.
No, I totally understand that, and I would not want a constructive grant based on the time frame. But you're well within your time frame.
Yeah, and we'll be able to get this done within our time frame, most likely,
okay,
just how we used to do it.
the continuance has been agreed to. Okay, Sarah can come back. Thank you.
Do you want to vote?
Thank you all.
Nate, it was a good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great reuse of the site too.
The graphics were clear.
Be better than DPW.
It'd be better as a DPW said, but you can't dig more than 12 inches.
Okay, last thing I have is approval of minutes 9/12 and 9/26. Has anybody read them? Okay, perfect. Ms. Foley.
So On the October 24. Is that what we're doing? I'm sorry. What are we doing?
Well, Gail, is she on?
It is 10:24. It
Okay.
is 9:12 and 10:24.
Okay, so it might, as top of my pile was 10:24. Can I do that?
Yes,
The first page, the last sentence, it says. Garage parking will come in phase 2 with the addition of 200 to 300 square feet over multiple years. I think that's 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. That was it. Was it in there? Was it? That was-
motion to accept the minutes of 10:24 as amended.
I thought it was even more than that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call? Yes?
Yes.
Is there enough? I didn't read. Yes, I guess, yes.
Yes, 4-0. Enough. Oh, Sarah,
Yeah, sorry, it was 200,000 square feet.
That's what I was gonna say, seems way more
Thank
than
you,
that.
Sarah.
Not two, it's 200 and 300,000 square feet.
300,000, yeah, that's what I mean, like, I was gonna say 20,000, I'm like, I don't think that was
No.
enough.
It was
Exactly.
1,000 in phase 1 and 200 after that.
Gary said 200 to 300.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
we voted on.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Just to give you a sense, the high school is 160,000. But anyway, so with that
We'll
modification,
amend it to
I
those numbers.
So it was correct.
Thank you.
200, 300, 100,000. You just had,
Yeah. We just.
yeah,
we
you had
just-
200 to 300 square feet and it's 200 to 300,000.
I thought I had a K there, sorry.
So
Okay.
I assent, yes.
Okay, 9:12, Ms. Foley.
The only thing I had on that is page 1, 2, 3. Middle of the page, it says Mr. Delicio, should be Ms.
Yeah, my husband wasn't here at that meeting.
Okay, is that all you have for that?
I think that's all I have.
Anyone else
Okay.
have any changes?
No.
Okay, motion to approve the minutes of 9:12 as amended. Mr. Only,
I'm sure.
second? I second. Roll call, Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
and yes, 4-0.
Yes, I vote yes. too.
Oh, and Sarah's, 5-0, sorry. Other matters, not reasonably anticipated. Anything, Sarah, more on this? Anybody have anything?
I would just like to mention one thing, all the 3 hearings tonight, we have an application folder, so I'm like going back and I can't even remember where we started these, like, can we start to get these in the right application folders? That makes,
Can we make an application folder on
We have it.
SharePoint?
we have one.
Oh, we have one. Can we move those in there, Gail or Becky or somebody?
Of course, we can move them in as soon as I figure out how to
You're
do
doing a lot of moving,
SharePoint.
Gail.
What?
You have too many, I have like a setting on and I'm not trying to figure out how to set it off, but I'm like, Gail, you're doing a lot of moving and changing. I'm like, oh, my
I haven't
inbox.
moved and changed anything, really. I can barely move anything.
I don't know, I must have 100 emails. Gail Hunter, change this. I don't know. All minutes.
I had a question. Did we ever get I think Sarah and Chris were gonna meet with, Mr. Bobrowski. Did we ever get what that meeting was?
We did meet with him today, actually. And we just went over the rules. He's gonna answer questions. Limit of 2 minutes for anyone to speak. Just want to make sure he understood all those ground rules.
Did he review the bylaws since he hadn't seen them in?
He was gonna, yes, and he's gonna review them again.
So he didn't have any comments about?
No.
We had also informed him of town council's opinion about the civil majority for the ADU bylaw. And
For all of them,
he didn't disagree.
Yeah, it says. Wait, it's a 2/3
Not
vote for
not
all the
simple,
bylaws.
but-
That's right.
Correct. Correct. The failure for the ADU to meet the requirements for civil majority.
Right, As with all of them, right?
Correct.
That's correct. Okay, I'll take a motion to just a note, we may need a special town meeting before. I'll send an email if there's some kind of an emergency that we need to. Otherwise, we'll see you all at town meeting on Monday.
Ron, on that question, I think if we're gonna meet, we should have our posting for the high school. And we should, the posting should say we're not gonna have a Zoom component.
I'll put an agenda on to that effect. You're meeting in the community room.
Yeah, which is where?
It's off the cafeteria, right off the.
I sent you directions. I will send out the directions again.
No, I'll find them.
Okay.
Do we sit on the stage?
Yes, we're sitting up front. all
That's
together at the
definite?
table.
I think it's definite because it's in the high school auditorium is my guess. So that's what Alan has. The planning board will all sit together at a table is what his plan is. I haven't.
You'd probably be there by 6.
When's it start?
Ron, Ann Harrison has her hand up.
Ian Harrison.
When Alan spoke to the select board about the arrangement, he will be at the center of the stage. The Greg and the town clerk will be to his immediate right, and the select board will be further to his right, and the planning board will be to his left. And there will be a podium at the left end for those who want to speak and don't want to speak from their position on the stage. At least that's my recollection. And
We
thank you
also
for
do-
recognizing it.
What?
We have to wear masks.
Even when we're speaking?
No, not when we're speaking, but when we're there. Otherwise.
That's, yes.
You're in the cafeteria.
They don't wear masks in football games.
Or when they're
Okay.
in the
Are we adjourning?
auditorium.
I
Let
second
alone
the
a football
motion to
game.
adjourn.
Okay, yes, motion been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn. Thank you all.
So.
Good night. Thank you for a tremendous amount of work.
Oh, thanks, Ann.